I said, now on the investigation, you know, the Democratic break-in thing. I mean, it wasn't Watergate then. It was the Democratic break-in thing.
Now, on the investigation, the Democratic break-in thing, it's not the problem there is that the FBI is not under control.
Haldeman presented the president with the plan.
Again, I'm saying what Mitchell recommended and Dean concurred with, according to what Dean told me, is for us to have Walters is the deputy director of the CIA at that time, General Vernon Walters, call Pat Gray. Pat Gray was the director of the FBI at that time, acting director, and just say, stay the hell out of this. This is a business here we don't want you to go any further on.
And that will fit rather well because the FBI agents who are working the case, at this point, feel that's what it is the CIA.
But would the CIA bosses cooperate? Nixon told Haldeman to threaten the director, Richard Helms, that if the FBI went ahead, his agency's worst humiliation, the 1961 fiasco at the Bay of Pigs, would be dragged up again.
He said, when you get in the people, say, look, this is the president now saying to me, look, the problem is that this will open the whole Bay of Pigs thing.
My purpose, my primary purpose, as is clearly indicated by the tape, and I don't dispute it at all, I wanted to stop the investigation, if possible.
We got word that Haldeman and Ehrlichman wanted to meet with Helms and Walters at 1 o'clock at the White House.
And we went in to see Mr. Ehrlichman, who talked in a general way about the embarrassment of this and so forth and so on, and people had shown excessive zeal, and then Mr. Haldeman came in.
The president has asked us to tell you that he wants, I think I said Dick Walters, to contact Pat Gray at the FBI and explain to them that exploring these Cubans and their ties and all that sort of thing, and the money source, may lead into all sorts of other things that we shouldn't be getting into, and that they should not go any further in that exploration.
At that point, Haldeman carried out the president's ploy. He warned Helms that Watergate could reopen the Bay of Pigs scandal.
Helms, a typically cold as a cucumber, icy, super spy type guy, came totally unglued.
Frankly, to this day, when I think back on that meeting, it's a long time ago, but it didn't seem to me that any of these things made any sense much.
He leaped up in enormous excitement, concern, and panic and said, this has nothing to do with the Bay of Pigs, and there's no problem about the Bay of Pigs, and the CIA had nothing to do with this, and on and on and on and on. And he finally calmed down, and they agreed that Walters would go talk to the FBI.
You know, in this government, if the president tells you that something is going on, you, at your own peril, decide right then and there that it isn't going on.
Helms prudently complied. He sent General Walters to the FBI to ask Gray to cut off the investigation in Mexico forthwith.
The case agent, the agent in charge, Angie Lano, came to me and told me that there'd been a halt. I'd asked him, what was happening, what was going on with the investigation in Mexico. And Angie told me there'd been a halt put on it by the CIA.
I'm getting telephone calls from the Assistant United States Attorney, Earl Silbert, saying, Angelo, what's going on? And I'm saying, Earl, what can I tell you? Every time we want to do something, somebody says, hold, wait, stop, no interview, wait, hold, stop.
The FBI agents didn't know the half of it. Inside the White House, Howard Hunt had a safe crammed with files on Watergate and earlier covert operations. John Dean had it drilled open.
I realize that some of this material is extremely explosive politically. Some of it is probably direct evidence of crime. I went over to Ehrlichman's office to explain to him what we'd found in the safe.
And he told me that he had proposed to deliver these contents personally to Pat Gray, who was the acting director of the FBI, and leave it to Gray's discretion then, so that if there were an investigation of what became of Howard Hunt's possessions, we could very truthfully say that we had turned them over to the investigators. That seemed like a reasonable formula to me. I said, Gray is going to be in my office this afternoon at 5 o'clock. Why don't you bring him over then?
I distinctly recall Mr. Dean saying that these files were political dynamite and clearly should not see the light of day. It is true that neither Mr. Ehrlichman nor Mr. Dean expressly instructed me to destroy the files, but there was and is no doubt in my mind that destruction was intended.
Gray, a Nixon loyalist, took the files home and put them under a pile of shirts. 6 months later, he would burn them with his Christmas wrapping paper. While their boss was burning evidence, FBI agents were uncovering more. Combing through one of the burglar's address books, the agents were baffled by this entry. They discovered that Howard Hunt's telephone in the White House, WH, number 202-456-2282, wasn't being billed in the normal way.
The bill was being sent to a girl over in Alexandria, Virginia. So we said, well, that's strange. So we went to Alexandria and found out that she was an employee at the White House named Kathleen Chanel.
Kathleen Chanel, secretary to Hunt and Liddy when they worked in the White House Plumbers Unit, had typed all their memos, including break-in plans. She had knowledge that could bring the investigators right to the Oval Office. She happened to be on holiday in England, in Birmingham. The FBI sent off a teletype to their man in London, asking him to track down and question Chanel. But the White House had been tipped off.
Immediately we realized that, if she was broadsided by agents, no telling what she'd say. So we decided we had to find her first.
And I don't think the request was over here 5 or 6 hours when the telephone rang again and said, hold. And I said, on what? And they said, no interview of Chanel until the White House is going to bring her back.
I then talked to my deputy, who really enjoyed these kind of little missions. And I guess he was a former Army intelligence man, and maybe this was a harking back to the old days. But he went over to England and traveled around the countryside till he found her, and then flew her back.
Well, I couldn't believe that I was 23 years old and someone from the White House was coming to England to talk to me about a burglary in Washington, and that within 90 minutes I'd be back in London catching a plane back to Washington to be interviewed by the FBI.
The next morning after they arrived, we impressed upon her the importance to not spill the beans, if you will. We told her, first of all, these things were not relevant to the Watergate investigation.
He told me to answer all the questions truthfully and to the best of my ability, but to remember that I was under the cloak of national security, that I had had many top secret and intelligence clearances.
They came under this broad category of national security, which was a wonderful tool for us to sweep a lot of things that we didn't want out under the rug.
The FBI questioned Chanel, but got nothing out of her. 2 vital weeks had been lost since FBI Director Gray had stymied the investigation at CIA request. But his staff was straining at the leash.
He called me and said he couldn't suspend us anymore. So I went to see him, and I said, I have carefully investigated this matter. There are no operations of the CIA that will in any way be jeopardized by this, and you're perfectly free to do them.